question we're asking today is, does professionalism require us to separate our personal beliefs from our abilities, or integrity demand consistency between what we believe and what we defend? So here we have two great debaters. I mean, we've read their portfolios and we know how great they are. We have on one end, we have Victor Bisong, a very great debater, and Gus Willisek, who will be going head to head in this debate in no short time. Just to confirm, is Victor Bisong here and Gus Willisek here?
I'm here. I'm here.
Gus Willisek here. Well, I can see it. So, okay, so without wasting more time, both speakers have 7 minutes to present their arguments. I will ask questions which respond to, and then they'll have 3 minutes of rebuttal. So without wasting more time, Mr. Victor, you have the floor.
Thank you for joining the head-to-head today again. My speech is going to be one that should be viewed from the point of what I'm saying, and not necessarily placing me as a devil's advocate, which I've always played, or which I always play. So the thing is, the conversation today about duty and integrity, and how we cannot necessarily say that people that perform their duties display moral failure, is something that many persons, consider in our society. For instance, Daniel Boala was involved in a debate, an interview with Mehdi Hassan, and during that interview, he was questioned as to things he said in the past, and it felt like because he no longer shared this opinion, people said that this person lacked integrity. Reno Omokri, on the other hand, has also been attacked on many instances, that he lacks integrity because of the new role that he performs. What is fundamental in this conversation is for us to separate personal convictions from professional responsibilities. We must understand that when people assume certain professional responsibilities, it comes with so many things, and we cannot necessarily blame judge their personal convictions on the altar of their professional responsibilities and duties. That is my justification in this conversation. So in this conversation, I'm saying that we cannot necessarily say that sustaining professional responsibilities should be a defining factor of personal convictions, of moral standings of individuals. My arguments are, first, that integrity is fidelity to your role, not fidelity to every past opinions. Now, we must understand that the consistency of fidelity is not tied to the fact that what you said 10 years ago is what you must say now. The consistency is rooted in the fact that the current responsibility that you hold on to it uprightly. You satisfy your duties well. You perform them without bringing in your personal opinions or convictions. That is what this thing is. And that is why, for instance, you see diplomats, even when they do not like certain policies, they have to operate in diplomatic ways, because they are holding certain offices in a way, holding certain offices, and they must accommodate all opinion holders. They must accommodate all dissenting opinions. That is what diplomacy is. You cannot say that these people that are diplomatic corps officials and members lack integrity because necessarily probably the opinion they held before they became members of the diplomatic corps has changed. We must not necessarily tie integrity to fidelity. We must not necessarily tie integrity to the consistency with past opinions, but we must ensure that fidelity is tied to the existing realities and the existing roles that people perform. It also applies to judges. A judge may personally oppose a law but must apply it. It's because, yes, a judge could personally feel bad that the people that killed a certain number of persons should naturally be killed. But if based on evidences before him, the argument and everything, it is proven that clearly these people are innocent, even when it's as a result of failure on the part of lawyers to substantiate this part through evidence. The judge is bound to uphold that particular thing. It means that his opinion must not necessarily count in that circumstance, but that professional attire that is wearing. So even if his past opinion has changed, even if his past opinion is no longer consistent with the current one, the fact that he's consistent with the performance of his role, that consistency is justified, that integrity is justified. The second argument I want to present is that professional rules exist precisely to prevent personal biases. And this is important. The reason why we cannot necessarily allow our personal biases to always flourish ahead of professional rules is the fact that when professional rules play, professional rules are created by society to protect more persons. Our personal biases are enormous. 100 persons in this room have about 100 personal biases. We cannot use that as a standard. The idea of professional rules or professional standards is necessary to ensure that there is an average acceptable form or norms or relations that people should uphold. That is very, very critical. So we must, as a people, ensure that professional rules are necessarily different from personal biases because it is a more consistent thing to follow. In this conversation, it is important for us to understand that professional rules are a bit more collective than the personal biases of persons that they are very, very subjective and could change as a result of people's, emotions or logical, stability at that point. The other argument that is important for us is the fact that a position is not immoral simply because you previously opposed it. The truth about is new evidences can emerge, new discoveries can come, and once the opinion you held necessarily in the past can change. We understand that this is not necessarily about people who probably due to empirical realities change their opinion. This conversation works within the realms of politics particularly. For instance, we understand that social media is so skewed that there are certain political actors that do not have enough social media capacity to withstand probably opposition. So when opposition sells certain narrative, what happens is the vast majority of society, of unsuspecting part of the society, buy this narrative. So in most instances, when you now have an opportunity from the narrative you bought, you can hold an opinion that a particular governor, a particular senator, a particular position is bad. But probably by getting to meet this particular person, you realize that this person is not as bad as that. It means that new realities have emerged, new evidences have emerged, new experiences have emerged. You have realized clearly that this person is not as bad as that. If, for instance, you once attacked this person and you now change your opinion, we cannot necessarily now tie that change of opinion to your lack of integrity. That would be unfair to you as a person. We think that is gaslighting and it's very, very wrong. Now, let's look at also from the point of people who hold structural offices. For instance, spokespersons of political parties, spokespersons of political icons. For instance, Daniel Bwala, that is spokesperson of Tinubu, for instance, and Daniel Bwala, that was the spokesperson for PDP and Atiku in the past. Understand that it is important in this conversation for us to look at this small nuance. It is a very tiny nuance that we must understand. Let's explain this. Daniel Bwala's role when he was in PDP was to demarket the APC. Now he has moved to APC. His role is to demarket the PDP. If we must go by the analysis I've given before, then we cannot blame Daniel Bwala for holding the new opinions because he's now working as a spokesperson of the APC. It would be unfair to this particular person for us to now judge him badly that he lacks integrity because he's fulfilling his role. We must understand that professional roles must be separated from personal biases. Yes, Daniel Bwala might not be comfortable with this particular thing, but at the fact of taking up this responsibility, what he does is his personal biases have to go down and uphold professional roles. His professional roles must take precedence in this circumstance. So we cannot question the fact that he lacked integrity because he was the spokesperson for PDP and now a spokesperson for APC. The job description of being a spokesperson of a particular person or party justifies him demarketing the other person.
Your arguments bordered around integrity, his fidelity to role, and not past opinions. How we judge a man by his integrity, how we know an integrous man is his fulfillment, is his connection or his fulfillment to his role rather than whatever past opinion that he holds. And I think based on that, I have two questions to ask you before I move into Mr. Isaac's speech. And these are the two questions. And I want you to respond to them in 1 minute, 30 seconds. If you cannot, then in your rebuttals, you respond to them. So the first question is, if we give grace to people because of professionalism, yeah, how then do we differentiate from opportunism, which in itself is morally wrong in political or governmental space? That's one. And then two, is there a limit to a professional obligation? If so, what determines that limit? I think these are the two questions I have in mind.
Okay, let me start from the second question. Is there a limit? Now, the limit would be to the extent where you decide not to take up a particular role. I feel it is unfair for us to say somebody has decided to take a particular role and is performing his role, then we now blame him for having to take up that particular role and fulfill the obligations that are incidental to that particular role. If you do not feel that the government is doing well, you shouldn't take up the role. The moment you take up that role, it means that you believe at that point that the government is doing well. Who judges or determines whether my decision to support Tinubu is right or wrong? It's not the masses. If the masses feel that Tinubu is being wrong, and I hold the opinion that maybe he has done the role leading to my community, because understand that these things are subjective. Even if we say Peter Oti, for instance, is doing, is it Oti in not Peter Oti, Oti in Abia is doing so well. There are people in Abia that have not experienced him. So the vast majority of people that have experienced him will speak good about him. But in that circumstance, there are still people that still hold the opinion that OT is not the governor as we idolize him to be. It means that this is very, very subjective. So if I feel that Tinubu is doing well and I go to support Tinubu, it is not in anybody's place to determine whether or not my action is justified or it is wrong. On your first question, the idea of this opportunism, which you think is morally wrong, is the fact.
Sorry. Can you respond to the first question during your rebuttals time? I think I'll give 4 minutes for that because of the kind of case I'm expecting from Isaac in response to this. But then we thank Mr. Victor for giving us a very wonderful case in support of this motion. We want to hear the wonderful arguments that Mr. Gospel Isaac will give in response to this. You have 7 minutes.
This is very ideological. So in same societies, individuals vote for their preferred candidates not just because they love, how beautiful their names are or how colorful their campaign posters are, but because the ideals that these people have align with what they believe in. So if this is the case, then public servants should not just be like chameleons that can we need to have opposition voices who are genuinely concerned about the state of affairs of the nation or whatever society they are in, and not individuals who are gruntled because they are not in favor with the government of the day. Integrity is fidelity to your, as Victor Bison wants us to believe. Because if that becomes the case, then who is even going to be able to differentiate between people who are particularly selfish and only concerned about aggrandizing their own selves, and those who really, really have integrity? Yes. So now, if integrity is merely fidelity to one's role, then what distinguishes, an honest public servant from a corrupt one who faithfully serves a corrupt master? So there are two things. We have to differentiate between having integrity, one, and being faithful to your employer or to your master, right? So Victor has successfully explained to us that it's okay for individuals to be faithful to their employers, right? That means that if you are being faithful to your employer, it means your submission, your loyalty is not to the generic good of the public, but it is to the individual who you are paying loyalty to. That means that if your master does something egregious or evil or bad, you are faithfully going to defend that thing with your life because that is the job that you are doing. But today's debate, if that becomes the argument, then I think it would be unfair for us to even have this debate in the first place. But today's conversation is about those individuals who have held a particular standpoint. Case in point, Daniel Boala recently, right? When he was interviewed and asked to defend things he had already said against the incumbent government, who are like against President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, when he was not on his side. And he made very, very bogus claims and said a lot of things. And people felt that what he was saying was true because he acted as though what he was saying was genuinely true and that he was very concerned about the state of the nation and how President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has embezzled a lot of money. These were very, very egregious claims. But all of a sudden, when he cross-carpeted into the party and the payroll of the incumbent government, all of a sudden that individual is now a saint. What this does for our democracy is that it stifles opposition voices because we now say, oh, these people are not even really here because they really care about us. It stifles opposition voices because we do not now trust whatever it is they are saying. Everybody is just selfish because they want to get money. They want to gain access to opportunities. So even if, for example, this individual is a very terrible person, and I'm speaking about against him today, we need to have politicians and public service holders who have integrity and are not just loyal to their pockets. What Victor Bison is telling you today is an idea that ensures that people are primarily loyal to their pockets. Now, if you are working in the private sector, for example, that might make sense. But when you are an individual who comes to public offices, who hold public offices, then we need people who have integrity to hold those positions, and not a world where these individuals are doing whatever they are doing because of how much it is that they are benefiting or gaining as a result of their alignment to their bosses, right? A propagandist can faithfully perform his role. A corrupt politician spokesman can faithfully perform his role. So when somebody is a political spokesman, we need to know that at this point he is losing his integrity. He is just there for his money. What Victor wants to force into our truth is that we should believe that they have integrity, but they are only jobs. It doesn't make sense, guys. I'm sure we are all listening to this. How does that make sense? So if, for example, your bosses, because there are people in the police force, in the security defense force, who would tell you that they're going to punish you, and they'll go and deny and say, oh, we caught you with firearms. We have instances where the police officers come and rob somebody of a crime that they did not commit. And when they say, why did you do that? Or maybe why did you pull the trigger? He could say, I thought that he was carrying he was a threat against national security and what have you. Whereas he had been paid by some elements to carry out that responsibility. So even though he has been paid by somebody, he could still come and say, I was doing it as my duty and my responsibility as someone who is loyal to my master, whoever employed me, or to my job, or to my profession, as the case may be. So we need individuals who are going to stand for the truth and nothing but the truth, and not a world where people are just going to do whatever puts money in their pocket. So today you say this is bad, and then tomorrow. Now, ladies and gentlemen, let's notice when they change tomorrow, it is because the employers have changed, and now they are benefiting from that system that they felt is bad. Not that the system has changed. No, nothing has changed. But now I have cross-carpeted to the other side, and I'm benefiting from it now. And all of a sudden, it has become absolutely beautiful. And then I can now say, oh, I think now it is better for us to accept this the way it is. So I feel like with this, I'm proud to say that integrity is diametrically opposed to faithfulness to one's role. So when Daniel Boala says the things he says, we know he's being faithful to his boss who is paying him and putting money in his pocket. But me and you know that he lacks integrity because it's either what he said about Bola Ahmed Tinubu before was a lie, or he is actually changing his mouth now because he's benefiting from the government of the day. Thank you very much.
So that there's a measure of accountability expected from them. So I have two questions to ask you, which of course I expect one to be responded to during your rebuttals and the other to be responded to now. Anyone you decide. So the first question is this. One constant thing in human life is change, yeah? So if I find better reasons, maybe not reasons tied to money, but if I find better reasons to switch political sides, and maybe for some reason I have a large following, how does that make me immoral? And I'm going to cite examples. The likes of Candace Owens, who was an active Trump supporter. The likes of Tucker Carlson, who was an active Trump supporter. In this year, like about position, that also made them. I mean, the last election that brought them. That I think the second question has to do with the question. A moral person, what makes him a man that has integrity? Is he holding on to a past opinion or a true opinion? And then what's your measure of truth? And why I'm asking this question is because we saw Showore support Buhari in 20. What time was that? I think that after 2015, 2011. I can't remember the year, but after Goodluck's last Buhari's first tenure, Showore was an active supporter for the coming in of Buhari. And over time, we began to see Buhari tilt and change. What makes him an integrous man? Is he him holding on to his support for Buhari, or him switching sides to whatever political side that in itself now makes sense to either him or the mass following or the followers that exist? I think which of these questions that you can answer now, you respond to it in 1 minute 30 seconds.
Sorry, I'm having to change sides because my network is bad and I have to just move around to see how I can get better network. So I would say that Victor Opia, the answer is very simple. People can change sides. They can reconsider their ideologies and be able to switch from one side to the other. So when they do this without any particular influence, financial influence, or what have you, then it makes sense to say, oh, I think I'm cross-carpeting because I believe my ideology has changed. But in most instances, in Nigerian politics, when people are in PDP today, APC is terrible. APC has ruined the country. But the next month, they cross-carpet from APC to PDP, and all of a sudden, APC is bad, APC is terrible. Are you seeing where the problem is? It's not always a hard and fast rule. There are always gray areas, right? I understand. But then when individuals do this because of the alignment and the interest they want, right? I feel like that's like where the problem is. The problem is where they cross carpet to another party, or they begin to get financial remunerations from this other party, and all of a sudden they are switching and saying they are good and what have you. When you see someone like Amayeli Showore, he has proven to be someone who is a nationalist, who cares about the country, right? So he doesn't have a permanent friend. And he's not like maybe today he's saying the APC government is perfect. When he supported Buhari into office, he saw that the government wasn't doing what the government promised. He remained an opposition, right? Because he knows what he wants, but not a world where he just switches because right now he's getting benefit from the government of the day, and then all of a sudden Tinubu is now an amazing person because he's on my side. I hope you get what I'm trying to say.
I get what you're saying. So we've come into the time of rebuttals, and due to the extent of matter that has existed, I think we'll be granting the grace of 3 minutes for both speakers to make rebuttals to the speeches of each other. So first of all, we go with Sir Victor Bisong to give us his rebuttals.
So let me start with the thing with interest, right? Interest can be anything, right? Interest can be money. Interest can be the fact that your community has gotten some level of dividends of democracy. Interest can be anything. We can't put a definition on interest. So to some persons, their aspect of agitations have been settled, so they might not have an incentive to want to call up government. Even civil society organizations, even heads of all of these movements, in most instances, they do not tackle, it's not all the government they tackle. Showore, for instance, is giving himself relevance so that he can continue to lead the presidential ticket of AAC, a party that continues to give him relevance. His interest is not to subdue himself to the government of the day, but stand as an opposition where he can also have his recognition. If he goes as a member of that party, he might be hidden because of the big names that are there. Now, people can call Showore as an opposition figure, and that gives him national recognition. He travels as a presidential candidate to so many places, get respect in that regard. People have different interests. You cannot tie interest to pecuniary interest and money exclusively. So I think that doesn't work. right? Another thing ISEC says that, that the opposition voices should be consistent in their criticism of government. But let's understand that this is necessary to explain that, yes, the purpose of opposition and the job of opposition stakeholders, spokesperson, is necessary to demarcate the entire government. Why is this so? So that they can have a chance at leadership. So it means that even in principle, even in ideology, that these people are not even fair in the way they criticize, because opposition voices cannot fairly criticize government, because when they fairly criticize government, it could stifle their chances of getting into government. The entire purpose of political parties and political opposition is to unseat the incumbent and get into office. So even if in that principle their moral standing is even questionable, so we cannot question their moral standing just because they moved to the next party. Another argument in rebuttal to what Isaac said is the fact that in governance, even if you say that you do not believe in Tinubu's government, it is on the balance of probability. How is that so? Yes, you criticize Tinubu's government today because a fraction of what you see in Tinubu's government is not working. When you cross carpet into Tinubu's government, what you begin to see are the things you blindfolded yourself from seeing. It's not necessarily that you will stay in opposition and criticize government entirely because government has not done anything. It's about perspective, it's about angle. You move from that particular angle into a new angle, and you're now speaking from the point of that angle. Understand that this is important. So when Danabola goes to justify Tinubu, when he was attacking Tinubu, he was attacking Tinubu from the point of demarketing Tinubu from the bad side of Tinubu. But now he has moved to the side of Tinubu and is now speaking from the good side of Tinubu. We cannot argue that Tinubu does not have a good side. It's about perspective. It's not about integrity. It's about the vantage point of this guy at this point. How is he seeing this thing at this particular point? We cannot tie it to a lack of integrity, but tie it to the change of his role. His role is now to view something different from how he was viewing it. If you say integrity should be consistent with opposition, then fundamentally and principally, opposition do not even have the ideological purity to call out anybody to be immorally upright. The argument again that I want to talk about, how institutions and why it is important for us to maintain the ideological purity of integrity to professional role is the fact that it's excited instance of police and how police can change their opinion. Let me tell you, it is even in the military that we must uphold the principle of professionalism. For instance, if you allow persons or military officials, for instance, to work in war front with their personal biases, it means that they will disrespect others, because sometimes others in the war front are others that outrightly mean you should do something that's actually bad. But the person that is your boss at that point knows that that is going to lead to a larger interest of the society. If we allow personal biases and convictions to judge people in war front, it means that we are balkanizing all of the system and making things even more difficult for us to run as a state. That is why corporate institutions consider insubordination as the highest form of offense. Why is this important? Why is this important? Because insubordination causes more problems than the challenges that all of these things cause.
What are your responses to some of the claims or rebuttals from Mr. Victor?
So, firstly, I would not respond to Victor's case on whether or not the police in every society we live in can lack integrity. We all have an answer to that. We've seen them act in their personal interest and rub it on faithfulness to their job. So I would not even do that. I would dignify all of us without and not respond to that. So, but then, politics is fundamentally ideological. This is one thing that Victor fails to understand. A lawyer may defend opposing clients because the legal profession itself exists to guarantee due process. But a politician is different. Citizens elect politicians because they represent a worldview. So if a politician says, for example, that subsidy removal is bad, or maybe borrowing is dangerous for the country, or that tax increases are anti-people, and then immediately begins defending those same policies once he joins the ruling party, he begins to defend that when he cross carpet to the other side, not before he cross carpet. Then it becomes problematic, because the social contract theory with politicians and voters is built on ideological consistency and representation. So when people don't have strict ideological standpoints, then elections become meaningless altogether. So I think that this is where it becomes very crazy, because we need to distinguish between individual career growth and opportunism. So when people begin to say things that they want to say just because I am no longer at the other side, then it strains on their integrity as individuals. This is not a case of a lawyer doing his job. It's a case of a political aspirant. So you told us before you got into power, you told us before we gave you our mandate that, oh, look, I believe in A, B, C, and then you have voted in, and then you go in and automatically go and do the exact same thing that you have already said you do not represent in the first place. I feel like to a very large extent, that goes a long way to strain the credibility of the integrity that you have, because you are now deceiving people who voted you, or who trusted you, or who gave you a platform because of the ideologies that you hold. Now, can people do these things? The answer is yes. So, but does that mean they have integrity? The answer is no. So, guys, then a boy can decide to be wherever. He can decide to be a snake tomorrow, or a lion tomorrow, a cub tomorrow, a cat tomorrow. We don't care. But we have our right to say, look, you are speaking from both sides of your mouth. You don't have a principle. You don't have an integrity. You are only loyal to who is paying you and who is playing the flute or playing the piper, right? So now that means that if tomorrow he comes to contest for a political office, we would not excuse him and say, oh, we understand that he's a good person. It was just because he was doing his job. No, we would say that this man lacks integrity, because we have seen individuals who resign from public offices when the ideologies they stand for cannot be protected anymore. So we need to prioritize ideologies over personal aggrandizement, as the case may be. So if we say that individuals can be loyal to their pockets, like I said earlier, and I'll still maintain it, there's the difference between faithfulness to your job and integrity. So you cannot draw them. They are never one and the same thing. Everything Victor Bisson says about faithfulness is okay, but does that mean that individual has integrity? No, we can't say the person has integrity, because they are only loyal to their pockets, and that is the problem we have had with politics in Nigeria and even the electorate. Everybody is quiet when they are benefiting from the evil, and until we change this mindset, our country would not get better. So now, I feel like society needs, an authentic opposition. We need opposition voices who are genuinely concerned about, the state of the country, and not merely disgruntled because they are out of favor, right? A democracy survives because some people are willing to criticize their own side. The moment criticism disappears when power arrives, we discover that the idea of their differentiation was never existed in the first place. It was never principled. It was only about what they get and who pays them and how much money they can get, which becomes a problem. So we should have people who say that I am in APC, but what APC is doing right now is not right, and we have to do better. Not a word where you say because I'm in APC, APC can do wrong. It's very bad.
Thank you so much for that. I feel like we've had a lot of table shaking. To Mr. Bisong, you have a question from Isong Eugene, and I'll just read out the question. How do you distinguish integrity from self-interest? Reno and Boala told millions of Nigeria before 2023 that Tinubu was unfit, but now they work for him. What changed their principles or their circumstances? If the circumstances do we reserve for people who stick to principles even when it costs them? I don't know if you got the question, or should I go by it again?
I did. I got the question. I got the question.
Yeah.
Let me respond to it. Let me respond to this. Now, your principle could be that you want good governance, but the mechanisms for that could, or circumstances, let me do the word, could now change. Imagine Reno and Boala against Tinubu. The circumstances within that situation that gave them opposition towards Tinubu was the information available to them, one, and the role they were fulfilling at that point. Let's not forget, You don't necessarily need to do a role to PDP to be in opposition. You can do a role for any other person, right? Necessarily so. But even if we say that these guys had interest, they moved to this side and they had new realities. The question we now ask is, are the things they are now reporting, are they lies? Even if they held different opinions from the point they had before, currently they now have new information, new realities. We must judge their integrity on the lines of the credibility of the information they turn out. So if they say the GDP has increased, if we go online to verify that GDP has increased actually, should we still say that these people lack integrity, or it is the fact that new information have changed their mindset? It is very important. Another thing again, he asked was about interest, whether they are saving interest or whatever. Understand that interest is very subjective. For instance, we mentioned Showore. Showore is somebody that we cannot necessarily say Showore has integrity because he has been in opposition. This same Showore has been presidential candidate of AAC for God knows how long. Is it that there are no people in that party that want to contest for that? So I said earlier that the interest of Showore cannot necessarily be tied to the fact that he goes to harass police. It should be tied to the fact that he does not even allow for internal democracy to happen in this party. That is very fundamental in this competition.
Okay, I would have read the question to Isaac, but I think there is a question that is in connection to Isong Eugene's question. And the question comes from Joseph Tukudo. He says, what are the yardsticks or parameters used to measure integrity in political context? That's the question to Mr. Victor.
The yardstick to measure integrity in the political context is the consistency of what politicians are saying with obvious realities. Not necessarily against their initial opinions. It is against the realities. So if they say the economy is growing, is it necessarily because of, should we say that they don't have integrity because they gave us that fact, and that fact is a lie or the fact is true, or because they said when they were in PDP that Tinubu is ruining the country? We should always judge integrity on the lines of verifiable facts that correspond with this information they are giving to us. That is the only way we can say politicians don't have integrity. It shouldn't be tied to their previous opinions, because opinions can change, new information can come. So the only way we can clearly identify integrity in this circumstance is if we trace what they are saying currently with the actual reality and not with their past opinions.
To Mr. Isaac, I don't know if you can hear me.
I can hear you.
Okay, yeah, you have a question from Ruth Vera Diwa. You argue that consistency is key to the social contract.
I get it now.
Okay, yeah.
Throughout my speech, I conceded to something. I said people can change sides when the reason is the greater good or the greater utility. So, for example, if you are supporting this individual and you get to see with newer facts that their stance might not be beneficial to the general public on the long run, you could switch, right? But then integrity demands that if you're a public office holder, you come out and explain, because thousands of people have changed their sides because of what you said about an individual. When Daniel Bola came up and said all the egregious things that he said about Bola Ahmed Tinubu, that he was a drug baron, that he has billion vans of monies going into his compound, he sounded very convinced. When he was interviewed by BBC, Daniel Bola did not say, oh, I think I was wrong. I'd gone to confirm and see that what I said before were lies. I apologize to Nigerians for saying those things and laying those allegations. What did he do? He denied blatantly and said, I didn't say that. I didn't mean it, like I didn't say that. That was terribly dishonest and disrespectful to Nigerians who he said those things to. Videos were there, but as usual, most of our politicians do not really have integrity like this debate is about. So let's say you want to cross carpet. Own up to your choices and the things you have said before. Take responsibility and apologize for the things you've done before, and not just come out and act as though it is irrelevant, just like William Suju said earlier. I think that this is where the crux of today's argument is. Now, Victor said one thing. I'm sure in Victor's mind, he has apologies for all of us. He's regretting his side right now. But then I would say, Victor said, oh, look, when you have now checked the realities of what you are saying now, what you have said before does not matter as far as what you are saying now is the truth. And people like Reno Mockery and Daniel Bola come out to support this government when they were opposing a government that had better results in time past. Because this is Nigeria. Hundreds of people, of individuals are in kidnap custody. Bandits are killing people like it's no man's business. The cost of petrol has decreased from 187 naira to almost 2,000 naira. And then somebody is telling me that if the facts are there, the facts, real people locutor like Victor will know, these facts speak for itself. This government is worse off than the previous government we have had. And all of a sudden, these individuals are quiet now because they are getting benefits from the government of the day. I feel like it is really disrespectful and disingenuous to all of us that they will state like.
Thank you for that very, very fine response. We have
So should integrity be measured by consistency of belief or by honesty about why one's beliefs have changed?
okay. So I think Mr. Victor will first of all respond to that, and then Mr. Isaac will respond to.
I clearly mentioned that integrity should be rooted in honesty when I explained that when a politician makes a statement about something, we can fact check him and trace that statement with the consistency of the truism of that particular statement. It means the yardstick for determining integrity should be honesty in line with the current reality. That's what it is. So Isaac is arguing that consistency should be a function of your former opinion, which of course is the crux of what we are discussing today. I say no. Your former opinion should not be the defining factors of integrity. Isaac eventually came back again and said, if you have changed opinion, don't just change. Talk to the citizens and tell them why you changed. It means that Isaac's problem is not necessarily with the change. It is actually with the activities or the actions of the people that change their opinions. It means that at the core of it, a change of opinion, whether it's for political reasons or for interest, which I've explained that interest is universal. Everybody has an interest. If that change happens, Isaac agrees that does not impeach the credibility of people's integrity. But the only thing that impeaches their credibility is the fact that they do not come to citizens and confess, and apologize to citizens. If that is Isaac's argument in the conversation, then definitely Isaac agrees with me that consistent or integrity should be judged based on the consistency of honesty with the current reality and not necessarily about a plethora of past opinions.
He's defending them, so basically we don't expect so much from him. Now, let me respond to Jude. Now, I feel like if this debate was about whether or not people can genuinely change positions, then we should not be here now. Victopia, right? We should not be here. Why would I argue that somebody should not have the freedom to change their opinion when they genuinely have reasons to? We will not have this debate in the first place. So the reason we are here is because the key actors in this debate, Daniel Boala, Reno Mokri, and the other FFK, right, is because these individuals are coming to defend stands that they are opposed without necessarily having any reason to. So it's not like the things have changed. So when you come and support Bola Ahmed Tinubu, ask me, we still have terrible cases of our road networks are bad. We don't have access to power. We struggle to have the access to basic requirements for sustenance in the country. Insecurity is at an all-time high. The dollar has dropped so badly. Inflation is at an all-time high. So I'm asking, when you change stance now, what has changed? The realities have not changed. The only thing that has changed is who is bankrolling these individuals. So this is not about, so when individuals want to come out and say, like when I talk about people owning up to what you said, when individuals know that they have to take responsibility for the things they are saying, they'll become more careful. But right now, people know that today I can say Bola Ahmed Tinubu is a terrible person, and then tomorrow I can speak, nothing will happen to me. As long as the other person can pay me, it becomes very, very terrible. So I believe that summarily, we have a responsibility to take our words very seriously. We have to be willing to be held accountable for our actions and the things that we say and when we say them, right? Because if at any point we are changing on our core ideologies, we need to explain. If you're a private individual in your room, maybe not. But when you're a political servant who is representing people, and when you have large following and large influence base, you need to come out and say, because of this reason, I have now seen. Then Ebola denied it. Like, you get what I'm trying to say? That's how bad it is. So this is what we're talking about. I know what Victor Bison is telling us. By the way, we'll not expect more from him. He's defending Dan Ebola and Reno Mokri. Thank you very much.
We thank the two speakers for giving us this very fine and hot debate. I mean, if this was a debate to judge, I have at each point when one speaker is done, you're almost like tilting towards the side that they speak. But then, of course, we are not judging this debate. I think this debate is a fundamental question to each and every one of us. And I also want to thank everybody who has contributed, from Mr. Franklin to Mr. Ju to Mr. Julius to Mr. Williams and every other person, even those who ask questions like Mr. Isong and Ms. Ruth and a few other persons. We thank you for your responses. So yeah, this is exactly what happened in this debate. So Mr. Victor Bisong came in and gave us two great arguments. He told us that integrity is fidelity to whatever role that you are given, not necessarily past opinions. And it tells you that the reason why professional rules exist is to remove whatever personal bias that you have. And then Mr. Gospel comes in with the idea that public service holders should be held accountable. They should have some form of accountability that they can give to us. But beyond that, he now tells us that politics is fundamentally ideological. So you can change opinions, but then you should be fundamentally ideological in your approach to it. And I think he cited the likes of Showore, who, despite his change and his movement amongst different politicians, he has always maintained a nationalistic idea towards politics. And I think those were very beautiful arguments that we heard from both sides of the. I think where the clash today is in what we define as consistency. To Mr. Gospel, consistency should be on the ideology that you hold. So even if you decide to support anybody that you support in whatever society that you find yourself on, a political space, that it should be in line with whatever ideology that you hold, not the blatant denial that the likes of Daniel Boala give and all. But then Mr. Victor Bisong responds by telling us that the consistency here should be that you are maintaining a track record of truth on verifiable claims. So even if I supported Buhari last year and I am opposing him this year, it should be that whatever claim I am using to oppose him at the moment, current time, should be claims that are verifiable and claims that are true. That in itself is what defines integrity and consistency in this. And I think those were very wonderful arguments. So this is the question I'm asking you. You cannot make responses to it now because we have. At what point can we define ourselves as people with political integrity? Is it when we are fulfilling the roles that we are connected to, in that we maintain a consistency in providing verifiable claims to whatever role that we are supporting or that we are justifying? Or is it the fact that we've maintained an ideology for a very long time? This was a very wonderful debate. I thank everyone for being part of this ninth debate. See you next week, Saturday. I remain up here, Victor. And thank you for joining us on another round of head-to-head once again. Thank you.